Hey folks, welcome. So today what we're going to be doing is setting up a website, a landing page specifically that we generated using marketing blocks. And we're going to be deploying it on Godaddy shared hosting account as a subdomain with a domain pointed to that. And then our backend is going to be Python, and we're going to set up a REST API backend using Python application, and we're going to be sending emails using SendGrid. So our contact form on our front end will be able to make a request to send an email, and then our back end will handle the necessary code and send that via SendGrid. So let's get started. For most of everything that we're going to be doing today, by the way, I'm going to keep it most of it to the browser. There is going to be some SSH terminal stuff that we're going to be dealing with, and yeah, so I want to try to keep everything in the browser. We're not even going to be editing our source code on a editor IDE like Visual Studio Code. We're just going to do that directly using the file manager. Okay, so real quick, this is the website that we've generated. I've already downloaded the source code, and we're going to upload that source code now. So we're going to go to our cPanel admin, and the domain that we're going to be deploying this at is SourceHQ, by the way, sourcehq.io. So this is the main landing page, and what we want to do is we want to have a landing page, another landing page that we can test out marketing at this URL, landing page 2. So in our file manager at Godaddy, or in our cPanel, we're going to navigate to the directory that houses our domain. And so this is set up as a subdomain under moraz.com. Okay. And this is the old one. I'm going to go ahead and delete it real quick. We don't need that anymore because we're going to be creating a REST API named REST API 2. Okay. So under sourcehq.io, the directory that we want to install our new front page in, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it landing page 2. Inside this, we're going to upload our folder, our zip file. Okay, so this is the zip source that we downloaded under Marketing Blocks by hitting the export button. All I've done is just rename it. There we go. All I've done is rename this HTML zip to SourceHQ2. Okay. Well, I have to navigate back to it here. Okay. There's our zip file. So let's go ahead and unzip it. Now we're going to refresh our page. Navigate back there. Okay. So here's our folder. And what we want to do is we want all these assets moved to the root of that folder. So let's go ahead and click them holding the control key. We'll click move. And we want to move them to landing page 2. And we go up one level, we'll see that our files are there. Okay. So that's all we're going to do for that for now. And what we want to do at this point is set up a REST API. So I've already set up a REST API for this application. And now for the demonstration, I'm going to create a new REST API called REST API 2. Okay. So in order to do that, back at our cPanel, we'll scroll down here to where it says software. And in software, we're going to click Setup Python App. We're going to create a new application. The first thing that we want to do, make sure of this, is let's set our Python version. I like to use the newest version. So the newest version is 3.8.12 that Godaddy supports. Okay, our application root is going to be the folder that we want this application installed in. So it starts with the application root will start with your home directory, and your home directory is this guy right here. So /home/ then your username, and that's the master username for your account. Okay, so our folder is going to start with that, and what we want to do is we want to specify public HTML, and then in public HTML source hq.io. We're going to install it right here. So we don't have to put a / at the beginning here. So public HTML source hq.io, and we don't need a trailing slash. Okay, our application URL is how we're going to find it on the internet. So we don't need a forward or a trailing slash here either. So we're going to call this API2 because I already got one living at API1 or API. So we can see, there we go. We'll keep this up. Okay. What was that? Okay, there we go. Now, our application startup file. So in a nutshell, what's going to end up happening is passenger WSGI is going to be deployed, and passenger WSGI is going to make a callable, and we're going to specify that as our entry point, and that's going to be a function basically, and that function is going to render our response. Okay. So the startup file is where that function is going to live. So we're going to call this startup2.py, and we're going to call it start app. Okay. So start app is going to be the function name, and then startup2.py is going to be our file name, our module name. Okay. So we're going to create this app. Now that it's created and it's also running, we can come over here and we're going to refresh the page. And on page refresh, well, first we're going to have to navigate back there. Okay, so in the source hq.io, we should have seen that created as REST API 2. Where is it at? So I don't know where it's been created at. Oh, I named it API 2. That's awful. Give me just a second. Let me look at these settings real quick, how I set this up. Yeah, that's not good. So right here, what I did was I want it to live in its own directory. So right now it's living at sourcehq.io, and that's not what I want. So I want it to live in a folder called REST API 2. Okay, so let's hit save on this. I'm going to restart this for good practice. And now if I come back here, see, I'm going to see the passenger WSGI and the root of source HQ, because right now I'm in the source HQ.io folder. So passenger WSGI has been created and startup 2 has been created. So I don't want that. I'm going to delete this. Now I'm going to refresh the page and I should see my folder REST API 2. So on page refresh, we're going to have to navigate back there to that folder. So let's go back to sourcehq.io. Let's click it so that we can see the contents, and we should see REST API 2 now. Well, we don't see it. Let's see here. Why don't we see that? Cannot move directory. Okay. Let's try it one more time. Now I've deleted the files. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, we've not done anything, so let's destroy this. We're going to recreate it because it's not allowing us to move that, so that's okay. So this time, we're going to name it correctly, or put the correct path in. Okay. So we got Python version 3.8, application startup file is going to be startapp2.py, and then startapp. Actually, you know what? Let's just call this application. Okay. So let's save it. And now if we go to our file manager, let's refresh the page. We should see REST API 2. So public HTML again, sourcehq.io again. Click on that. Let's click on that so we can see the contents. Okay, so REST API 2 here. And if we go in, we're going to see our passenger wsgi.py as well as startapp2. So if we inspect this file, we're going to see here it's importing OS, sys, and IMP. So IMP is a library that's legacy now. Import lib is the actual library that's being used in newer distributions of Python, but we're not going to mess with this code at all. It works. And the reason why I want to show you this is here. It's importing our startapp2.py, and then it's setting it equal to WSGI. And now this class instance WSGI.application is calling the method application, and that's what we specified over here. Okay. Now let's close this. We're never going to see that again. We don't have to mess with it. What we want to be working in is the startapp2. Okay, so in the startapp2, when we open it up, we see this function, define application. All right, the server is going to send us the environment variables, and the environment variables is going to be a dictionary or a hash of key value pairs, and that's just information from the server that's required to be sent to us. So we're going to have things in there like the request method, if it's a get, post, put, delete method. We're going to have the remote address, so the client browser in essence, and a bunch of other things. So we want to grab two things that's really important. We want to grab what type of method it was, as well as we want to grab the variables of the form that's sent to us through the post method. So we want to grab the form data. Okay, so real quick though, what's happening here is it's creating a response. The first argument of the response, of start response, is going to be the status, and then the second argument is going to be your headers. Okay, so the headers is a list, and inside that list are tuples. So for each header, it's a key value pair. It's just going to be tuples. Key is going to be the first item, and then the value is going to be the second item. And then it's creating a message here, and these 3 lines of code, and then it's encoding that message and returning it. So if we hop over here and we refresh this page, we're going to see this, we should see this REST API give us a response now. It's not for some reason. Oh, well, I put the application URL as Miraz.com. So let's make sure that we've got the right application URL. And let's go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and restart it. Good practice. And let's go ahead and go over here. Let's refresh this page. Okay, so now we get the response. So it works, and then our Python version, which corresponds to this. Okay, so we're going to use a couple of libraries, and in order to install those libraries, we're going to be using pip. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to terminal in using SSH. And whenever we're in the Python application itself, if you look up here to enter to a virtual environment, run the command, okay? So this source being activate is going to create activate the virtual environment, and then change directory into the second command here is change directory into that directory, REST API 2. Okay, so with this command, we can terminal in. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, whenever connecting to Godaddy shared hosting through SSH pass on the Linux systems, this is going to be important here. So we need to specify the option of this host key algorithm SSH DSS, okay? Okay, there we go. Now we can copy our command that we got from the website, and now we can see that we are in a virtual environment, right? The virtual environment's activated. We always know this because we see the virtual environment over here. Okay, so I just listed everything out, and we're in the right folder. Okay, so now let's use pip3, and we're going to install some dependencies. So the first dependency that I want to install is going to be the paste library. The paste library is going to give us a class called request, and that request class is going to help us. We're going to use it to parse our form variables out of the environment string that we're going to receive from the server. Okay, so we've got that installed, and other than that, I don't think we need SendGrid, so we need to go ahead and install SendGrid. So and we're using SendGrid as our mail API. Okay, so all that should be all we need in the terminal right now. Now let's go ahead and write in our API. First of all, before we do that, let's go ahead and Google SendGrid Python API. Like I say, we don't have to use very much code at all to get all this stuff running. So we're going to copy it to the clipboard, and then we're going to come over here, and we're going to create a function called sendMail. And our function, we want to accept a subject, a body, and a from email as our parameters. And this is going to return a tuple. Okay, so let's move our imports up here, and we're going to delete that import because it's already been imported right here. Now let's go ahead and the next thing, let me tell you this. So as I create this variable, we're going to use environment variables, and I'm going to access that with os.environment.get, environ.get, and I'm going to use get because if we use square brackets and that variable doesn't exist, it's going to give us an error, and I don't want to deal with those errors. So using get, we're just going to return none if that environment variable has not been set. Okay. So the from email is going to be the email that we've set up and verified or validated at SendMail, or SendGrid, should I say. I'm saying SendMail, but whatever. And I'm calling everything SendMail. But anyways, so that's going to be the email address that we've already verified there. I'm going to send it to myself because I want to receive the leads. And I'll call this a website lead. And the body is going to be the body that we pass from the front end. Now, it's printing out the response status code, body, and headers. We don't want to do that. We're going to return true as the first item of our tuple, and then we're going to return false as the second item of our tuple. The reason why I'm returning a tuple is because if there's an error, I want to return the error message. So if the email was in fact sent, then the first portion of the tuple will be true. And if it's not been sent, if there was an error, then that's going to return false. And then I want to return the error there. So that's how I'm going to handle the errors for that. Okay. So let's go ahead and write in the application. First thing that I want to do is I want to get the method. I want to check that the method is a post method and not a get method. And there's a couple of things that I want to test for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a flag. And I'm going to trip that flag to true if it's a bad, if it was a bad request. So if the function should return a bad request, we're going to trip that flag. So here I'm getting the request method from the environment that was sent from the server and passed to this argument here. Getting the request method, and I'm converting it to lower because I like to work with case. All right, and I'm also going to get the IP. And that's just going to be remote address or remote ADDR of the environment that was sent to us, the environment argument. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a flag. So we're going to set this to false by default, and now we're going to say if method does not equal post, now we want to trip that flag to say true. So bad flag equals true. Okay. Now we need to get the form body. So what the front end sends to us, that's what we're after here. So we're going to use request from the paste library. So let's go ahead and import that. And from request, we're going to use the method parse form vars, and we're going to pass in our environment. Now we're going to create a body that we're going to return to the client. And that body is just going to be a dictionary. And we're going to serialize this as JSON. Whoops. Just a moment. I have got my touchpad on, so it's going to mess with me here. So I want to turn that touchpad off. Okay, so the body is going to be equal to, in the fields, the body that we sent from the front end. And the subject the same. It's going to be the subject that we sent from the front end. And And the from address is also going to be the from address that we sent from the front end. I lost my train of thought. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the body. So what we want to do is we want to validate this endpoint. And our validation is not only that it's a post request, but that our front end has sent us both a subject and a body and a from address. Whoops. That'll definitely give me errors. There we go. Now we're going to trip the flag again to true. Okay. Now we want to send the email. And if one of the two conditions applies, that the flag's already been tripped, so we didn't get all the information that we needed, and also that it's not a post request, or the email didn't get sent, we want to return a 400 response. So let's go ahead and try to send the email now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to nest this into an else statement. And what I'm going to do is also set sent equal to false. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and instantiate that variable sent. And if these things, we didn't receive these things, then I'm not going to call send mail. That'll keep us from receiving any like 500 errors. We're only going to get the error that we want, which is a 400 error. Okay. So we're going to pass to send mail, body, subject, and subject, body, and email. Okay, so let's turn that around. So it's going to be subject. Goodness, there we go. Too many bodies. I should have renamed these variables something different, but it's okay. There we go. Now we're going to handle if it's a bad flag or not sent. Okay. And the way we're going to handle that is just like the code was given to us for a start response, and we had a start response of okay. Now we're going to set the status as 400 bad request. Okay. And we don't need, actually, let's go ahead. We're going to set a header because we're going to return some message to the user. So we're going to send it everything JSON. There we go. So we've specified that header. And now we're going to set the body. Let's create a message. Something went wrong sending your email. And we can use that. We can handle that on the front end later on down the road if we want to create a unique message. Okay. And let's go ahead and we're going to say if error, and we're going to create body error equals, and let's convert it to a string. So we're casting the error to a string that we received from send email. So here, send email. If there is an error, it catches it, sends it up to, sends it to our calling where we called it, and then Here we're getting sent an error because we're returning the tuple, and the error is the error from here. And now if that is present, then we're just going to convert it to a string and set it equal to error in the body. And now we're going to take that body and we are going to use the JSON library. We're going to dump it into a string. And then we're going to return the response. And don't forget to import your libraries. So we just imported the JSON library. That should be it for error handling. So if the code reaches this far in the code path, then there are no errors. There are no more errors that we want to handle. So we're going to have a message sent to the client that our email was successfully sent. If I can spell. Exclamation mark, because this is cool. We're happy that the email sent. And we're going to send back the client their IP address so that we know that, so that they know that we know. And we want to send back a 200 OK response as their status. And we want to set our content type header to application JSON. And let's take our response and we're going to serialize in JSON the body that we created for a response, set it equal to response, and now we're going to return this. Now we're going to return the response. Okay. We're going to save this now, and we're going to test it out. So in order to test it out, whenever we make code changes, we need to hop over here, and we're going to restart the application in our cPanel. And if you forgot, at our cPanel, we can go down to software. We can click on Setup Python App, and we're going to see our applications. The application that we're working on, we want to click over here to edit. Okay, and then you can just hit restart. So that application has been restarted, and if we go to it here, we're not going to get it works anymore, for sure. Okay, now we're going to use Postman to see if that endpoint is working and to help us debug it. So let's go ahead and look at Postman real quick, and this is going to give me an error, I can already tell, but anyways, we're still going to use Postman to begin with. So let's send a request. Okay, something went wrong, the web application could not be started. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of debugging, and in order to debug this, we're going to go to the terminal, and we're going to debug it in the terminal. And the way we're going to debug it is we're going to import the actual file that we were working on and see what errors we get. Okay, so let's list out. Okay, so we're right in the right folder. Everything's good to go. So we're going to create a Python interactive terminal, and we're going to say from start app to import application. Okay, so here we go. On line 73, response JSON.dumps body. We forgot an equal sign here, so let's hop on over here. It's going to be on line 73 on down here. We forgot our equal sign, so let's save the changes. Let's go over here, restart our application again, and let's try to import that again. and now it imported. Okay. So if we go to, whoops, I didn't show you that. I forgot to switch screens. Give me just a second. So I just updated the code here. I put in my equal sign, and then I restarted the application here. And now on Postman, we can test it out. Okay, we received an incomplete response from the application. So we still got a little bit of debugging to do. Let's try get request. Okay. Let's go ahead and hop back to our terminal, see if we can figure it out. So, import it, and now we're going to call application. And we're going to have to pass it in 2 arguments. So the first one is going to be a dictionary, and then the second one is going to be a callable. We're going to call that callable testy. We haven't created testy yet, so we're going to create testy now. And testy is going to pass, and now okay. So right here, none type object has no attribute lower. So let's inspect our code real quick, see what in the world they're talking about. Okay, that should have worked. Let's restart this just to make sure, because I don't see where this would, that would be an error. Oh, I know why it's an error. Let me pass in a request method. Okay, so here's the problem. We have no attribute parse from bars. And apparently I did not, I misspelled this. So I spelled it from vars, and it's supposed to be form vars. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. So what I did was, on this line, I passed a request method key as my first argument. So I'm testing out application, and it expects an environment key value pairs. And I need to pass in a request method, and then I just passed in a dummy function. And so whenever I execute that, I can see my error right here. And the error specifically is, this is supposed to be parse form vars, not parse from vars. Okay, so we can go ahead and fix that error. And come on down here. That's it. So let's go ahead and restart our application. And now there we go. Okay. So we get an unauthorized error. Okay. So that's great. That's great news. Everything's working the way it's supposed to. We're just not authorized to send emails. And the reason why we're not authorized to send emails is because we haven't set up our environment variables yet. And our environment variables contains one, we need to set up our API key, and then two, we need to set up our from email address. And in SendGrid, we validate an email address, and that's going to be our from email address. So what we're going to do is hop on over there, set our environment variables real quick, and test this guy out. So in our Python app, if we go to the bottom, we're going to see environment variables right here. So I named mine SendMail, and it's supposed to be SendGrid, but we're just going to continue with SendMail. All right, so my email address from is going to be jamie@sourcehq.io. We're going to set that. I'm going to pause the video at this point. I'm going to go grab my API key, and then I'm going to paste it in here. And I don't really want to change that API key around again. So I already got it in use, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I've inserted my API key, and we're going to go ahead and restart the application. And now we should be able to use Postman to test that API endpoint out, see if we can send an email. And we're still getting unauthorized. Okay. Let me test it one more time, just to make sure. Okay. Yep, we're still getting unauthorized. So let's see what we can do about that. So let's switch to the browser. I'm going to go ahead and stop this app all the way. Start it. And I'm going to look at the source code, make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, I did miss something, I do believe. Right here. Okay. So I'm trying to get the SendGrid API key, and that's going to be the problem. So let's put in our API key here, where we're actually using the SendGrid API client. All right, so whenever we instantiate that object, we need to, or instantiate that class, we need to pass in our API key. And it was passing in a null because SendGrid API key did not exist. And we're setting it here. We're grabbing it from the environment settings, SendMail API key. So let's go ahead and save those changes. Let's go ahead, restart our app. And now let's switch on over here to Postman, and we're going to test that out and see if we can send an email. Okay, this time we get our message that it was successfully sent. All right, we're going to verify that in our email. So we hop over here to our email. We can see that we got a new email. This is a really cool test. Thanks, bye. Perfect. Okay, so everything's wired up for our back end, and now we're going to switch on over to our front end. And yes. So let's close this. We don't need this anymore. All right, let's go up one level, and in order to test out our front end, first of all, we're going to load it in. Let's close out these windows we don't need. Okay. So whenever somebody clicks this contact form and they enter in their information, they should be able to send us an email. So let's go ahead and click inspect. So right click, click inspect, and let's pull up the console. And what we're going to do is test out this function. And right here, it's making a GET request, okay? And this GET request is to, it's sending save lead, and the query parameters page ID, user ID, and email, all right? So let's expand this, and let's look at the files that are involved in this error. So we got jQuery, that's not it, jQuery, that's not it, but download page right here. That is our file, and we can see whenever we hover over it, it's at source hq.io landing page 2 JS download page. So let's click on it, and on line 542 we can see here an AJAX request. So that's what we want to edit to send our emails. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna navigate back there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and navigate to that folder, and I'm gonna open up that file, download page, edit. And I'm just gonna do a quick search for save lead, because that is the asset URL is trying to hit. So here at the URL, we are going to, because it lives in our domain at API2, we're going to put a /API2. So if we leave out the actual domain, sourcehq.io, then it's interpreted as the domain that the website's running from. So we don't have to actually specify that. If you're hitting another website, then your AJAX request is going to, you're going to have to put that in the URL. Okay, so the top is going to be post, and then our data here, we don't need to send it a page ID. We need to send it a username, subject, or an email, a body, and subject. Okay, so we're going to send it a subject, and we're going to send it a body, and we're going to send it an email. So we want to call this a website lead, and then in our body, actually, you know what? I am not going to save these changes because, well, you know, it doesn't matter right here. So the form object.find, so what it's actually doing is this is an attribute selector of email, okay? So we can use that to get the username as well. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say name plus something, and then we're going to insert a couple of breaks, which is like a new line in HTML, if you're not familiar. And then we're going to send it the email of our lead. So we can copy this on up here. And we need to get the name. So let's go ahead and inspect this element here and look for the attribute, what it's called. Okay, so whenever we inspect it, whenever we click this and inspect it, it's actually going to show us the element over here, and it's going to take us off the console. Okay, so if we look for the name, we can see the name attribute is username, so most likely that's going to access that for us. Yeah, so they're accessing email here, okay, and now we're just going to grab the username here. So we can go ahead and let's just copy and paste this. Perfect. And we're after the username. Okay. So, and we don't need in JavaScript, we don't need to, our keys don't need to be surrounded by quotes. Okay, so we've got subject, body, and email. So let's just see what that does real quick. So let's save this. Let's go ahead and refresh our page. All right, and I'm going to view the console in case there's any errors. So we are going to send an email from Darth Vader. Darth at USSenterprise.com. Okay. So I'm not getting, I'm not getting any errors from this form. I'm getting a image error, can't find the image, so that doesn't apply to us. And then a CSRF token because they're running Laravel, so I'm not going to worry about that either. Now, if I hop on over here, let's check to see if that email has came through. There we go. Okay, so we got a new email. And the email is from Darth Vader, and his email is darth at USSenterprise.com. Perfect. Okay, that's it. So we've just wired up a REST API using Python and Godaddy shared hosting, and we wired up the front end. Did a little bit of debugging. So there's one more thing that I want to tell you while I've got you here, and that is you're going to set all this up, and then you're going to have CSRF errors, and you can look it up. So what you really want to Google is CSRF wide open settings HT access, and for testing. So it's a cross-site request forgery prevention, right? So anyways, look for wide open settings just by Googling that, and that's going to help you get started on that. Anyways, I can't find it now, but anyways, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for CSRF settings for your htaccess file. Your htaccess file is going to be in the root of the domain folder right here, .htaccess. So if you look at mine real quick, I've got a couple of reroute conditions here with a reroute condition with reroute rule, but the headers, these are security headers here, but these headers I've got always set access control allow methods to get post options delete put, and I'm allowing all headers, pretty much all headers. I'm allowing credentials to be set, and this is the guy that really makes the difference. So access control allow origin, and I'm allowing all origins for now. And you'll want to set these headers because the browser is going to send a pre-flight request, and it's going to get return no headers, and then it's not going to load that resource. So set your htaccess file, and you should be good to go. One of the ways that you can tell that is you're going to get a 502 response whenever you're debugging in your browser, but you can use Postman and you're going to get a 200 response. So whenever you see that and it's any response about cross-site forgery or anything like that, that's what it is. All right, and other than that, I think that we are good to go. We have set up our REST API. We've looked at our htaccess file for CSRF cross-site request forgery setup for our headers, and we wired in the front end. Thanks a lot, and hope you enjoyed it.